check my YouTube channel, subscribe, and share.
Welcome everyone to Kimberly Speaking podcast. Today, our special guest is Miss Kendra Jackson, trauma survivor, overcomer, and single mom. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you for having me, Kimberly.
Great. So glad you could be here today. So, tell everyone about yourself.
I don't like to label myself as a single mom, although that is the label. However, I do look at myself as being a supportive mom of two beautiful daughters. Um, I'm currently in the process of trying to develop an organization where I can reach back and help youth, kind of like navigate life and the problems that arises as youth and adults. Um, and also in the making of kind of like opening a business as well. So yeah, and I'm very, very active with my oldest daughter because of course she models, so that keeps me kind of occupied with her. But I'm always doing something, whether it's telling my testimony on Facebook, helping someone that's less fortunate, or whatever. I'm always doing something. I'm never not doing anything.
Okay, well, I like that. So, let's dive right in. So, one part of your testimony, you said that you were sexually abused, by a cousin when you were in primary school. Tell us a little bit about that and how it affected you.
When I first initially was touched, my mom at that time, you can say she was a single mom. Although my father was alive, he had alcohol issues, so he drank a lot. He drank heavy, and lo and behold, he was literally outside of the door while I was being molested. And we was in the living room, and I can still remember how the house was. So it's when you walk through the front door, you have the TV on the TV stand, and then you have the little opening, and you have it was a chair, recliner chair that was there, and my cousins, they were facing the wall, so they actually couldn't see him standing in the doorway, where my mom and dad slept it, and he was just kind of like pointing, using his pointer finger, telling me to come here, and I kind of like blocked it out and ignored it, and then he just stood there and kept asking me to come in the room. So I got up, and when I went in the room, he kept like a crack in the door, and I'm assuming that was to hear whether or not somebody came through the front door. But we were standing in the room, and it in my mom's room at that time, she had a dresser with the mirror attached to it, and it was facing the wall. So he was behind me with his back positioned to my parents' bed, and I was in front of him, and he that's when he started like sexually arousing me. But the whole while is like I'm young, and as a kid, I don't fully understand, what is this boy doing to me? And even as an adult, I still didn't process what took place. But yeah, he started sexually arousing me, and then the whole while he's doing what he do, I have to look in the mirror to see him take me
Wow.
through this torture. So yeah, he did that for quite, I guess until he got himself off, because we stood in there for a while, and then he made sure that once he was done, he made sure that it was safe and clear for me to leave out the room, and then he came behind me, but he kept the room dark. The room was dark. He never cut the light on, and I guess that was to make it as if nobody was in the room. And he kept the crack in the door. He did what he did, and it just went from there. And that when I was young and it happened, because I was already going through so much within my household, I really didn't know or process what took place. It wasn't until my adult years, and that was maybe, I want to say 2017, 2018, maybe, and it may be it's somewhere in that time frame, 16, 17, or 18, whatever year that was, that I was really fully able to tell my mom. Like, I never told her about it. After it happened, I went back in the living room with my cousins. I just acted like nothing happened. I still went on every day like I just wasn't touched. I didn't tell anybody because he verbally told me I better not. Because so I was standing in front of him, and he had his hand around my neck, and he was doing what he do,
Wow.
and he told me to that I better not say nothing. And I'm just, at that time it's so much to process, because I'm just like, why is he telling me not to say nothing? Why did he got the lights on?
Yeah.
Why is the door just cracked? Like, what is he doing? Those questions arose, but as a child, it's like, I'm in a situation where I'm scared. I don't really know what to do. And I know that if I tell my dad and he's intoxicated, this gonna go all the way left. And my mom, I know for sure. she would have protected me because she didn't have a good relationship with my dad's side of the family anyway. But because me and my mother didn't have a close knit relationship, I didn't even feel comfortable bringing that to her. Like it wasn't a foundation there to say this is my mom and I know she's going to protect me. We have that connection, we have that bond. So yes, I can go and tell my mom. So since I had no one to turn to, I just swept it under the rug. And when I say swept it under the rug, I mean deep as far as it can go under the rug to the back of my head. And I never thought about it again. And the only reason why I was able to tell my mom is because I was talking to a guy one year and he was actually trying to give me a hug and he put his hand around my neck just as my abuser
Oh
did.
my
And
God.
I yeah, and I flipped out. And in that moment I forgot that he didn't even know what happened to me. And it shocked him how I reacted. And he was like, well, why are you acting like that? And I was like, let me tell you something, don't ever do that again because that's a trigger for me. And he
Trigger.
started
Yep.
yeah, he started picking out like picking out information from me. And he was the first person that I ever told what happened to me, telling somebody what happened to me. So he just, like I said, he started picking out information, he started asking questions, and he had me in a place where I was safe enough to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, well, I feel like you should sit down and talk to your mom about it and tell her what happened. And I'm like, and even then, I'm like, no, I don't feel like I should tell my mama that because what is she gonna do? She wasn't even there when it happened. She couldn't save me when it happened, so I don't see the need of telling her. And he just kept being patient with me. He just kept talking to me about it. And eventually, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Let me just talk to my mom about it. And even then, I still wasn't comfortable with telling her because she went and did the exact thing that I figured she would have done. She went and told a family member, and that family member was like, don't call me with no crazy mess. Out of all these years, you ain't heard nothing about that. Ain't nobody did nothing to Kendra. And I'm like, what? What? Like my body really went through trauma, and you said nobody did nothing to me. So that's why I really never felt like it was a need to tell anybody anything about it, and I just kept it to myself. And that
So
was a struggle.
how much older was your abuser than you? What was the age difference?
So my father passed when I was 8. I was still at primary school, so I know I was no more in like kindergarten or first,
Oh my
if that.
God.
I because I was always tall. I've always been a tall child. So it was kindergarten the first because like I said, my dad passed when I was 8. And I think he was somewhere, he might have been middle school, high school or something. But he was way older than me.
Wow.
Way older than
Wow.
me. Way older. Very much
And
older.
it's really sad because a lot of people that were abused, they were abused by family members. And that's why,
Yeah.
you have to be careful, um, not only with little girls, but little boys too, but like who you have them around, even if it's family. A lot of people, talk about how their parents are very strict with letting them spend the night at family house, and then you always like, well, why are you like this and why are you mean? But then you think about now all the people that were abused by family members, you see why they were like that. And a lot of times I've seen that parents are like that. They were abused, so because they know what happened to them, that's their way of protecting their kids. And it sounds like you suppressed the memory, and then when, like you said, the guy hugged you, it triggered you, and so
Hmm.
that's what brought all those memories back. A lot of
Yeah.
times we suppress things that are painful, and you being that young, you probably didn't know what was going on. Like you didn't know what was wrong, you didn't know what was going on, and that's so
No.
sad. Oh my gosh.
No.
Oh my
And
God.
even the crazy part, and that's how I know I still have healing to do because even now my body, how my body tensed up when he molested me, even now I have to speak to myself and say calm down and relax because my body will still tense up like that now, and that's been
Yeah.
years ago, and it still
Oh my
tenses up. So
gosh.
um when you're being molested, it's a feeling that you often can't put into words and you try to understand it, but I don't think it's an understanding to it because you have so many mixed emotions like why me? What did I do?
Yeah.
Why nobody else? Like why was I chosen? And even me, like it was another female cousin that was in the living room with us, and I'm like, why did he choose me? Well, like why he didn't pick her? He picked me. He could have
Yeah.
got her. And that's always been a question, but molestation is just it's horrible. And I hate when I hear people talk about it, I'm like, it's a lot to bear because
Yeah.
you try to mask the pain and it still presents itself and it affects you in all parts of your life. Because even with my
Yeah.
daughters, I have to sit down with them a lot as they're getting older, and they don't understand why sometimes I'm a helicopter parent, and it's not intentionally, and I tell them that. It's just that I wish I could have told my mom what happened to me. Um, and I want them to know that if anybody ever do anything to you, don't be afraid to come to me and tell me, because I'm here to protect you. That's my job. That's my duty. You don't have to, you don't have to be in silence for something that somebody did to you like I did. Like those were a lot of years to carry that hurt, that pain, that burden, that trauma, that torture, because basically that's what I felt like it was. It was a lot to carry. And then you a child. I just did things like stay out, go play with kids. I never wanted to be home because I never wanted to be in that situation where somebody else could um be in a position to touch me. And even after that
Yeah.
situation, and I was young, it was like men just started touching on me inappropriately as if I was a doormat. So it was like now he I guess considered himself getting an orgasm. Then the other men, they're kind of like touch on my body in places where they know that they shouldn't. And it's like now I'm muted because I don't have a voice. My voice was gone when I kept telling him no, and he didn't listen to me. So I just was like, okay, just go with the flow and let everything be, and it'll be over soon. And I'm assuming if people are molested, that may be their thought because that was mine. It's like, just let it be what it is going to be. Let them do what they're going to do, and then it'll be over soon, And that's just the mentality that I picked up from being molested. It was, all right, it's okay. My no didn't mean anything. He didn't listen to it. So there's no need for me to keep saying no because they're not going to listen to it. Just let it be, and it'll roll over soon. And that's what I went with.
Wow. Wow. I'm sure it felt good that when you told your mom, she actually believed you. Because a lot of people go through, they tell an adult, and an adult doesn't believe them. Especially like as a mom, like that's very hurtful. I would imagine to tell someone, that close to you, hey, this happened to me, and then they don't believe you. So that would be a whole nother source of trauma in itself. So I know you
Mhm.
also mentioned that, your father transitioned when you were 8, and then your mother had a nervous breakdown, which left you raising your younger brother and yourself. So, talk about that on top of the trauma that you already experienced.
Yeah, for me, I'm getting a little emotional, so bear with me. But
Okay.
for me,
I mean,
trauma
it's
presented
emotional.
itself at an early age for me. Like I think that the first memory that I can really recall is trauma because it hit me so hard at a young age, and that's basically all I knew. So my father, he used to do dead end jobs, very good mechanic, but he suffered with alcoholism because he was a heavy drinker. And at some point, he came to the decision that he was going to go and move with his cousins in Rhode Island and with his aunts and try to better himself. And I remember him because I stayed with him before he left. I was a daddy's girl, and I stayed with him before he left. And I remember him telling me that he was going to get a job, he's going to do better for himself, and he's going to come back and get us. And that's what I held on to. I was really expecting my dad to come back, but in the process of that, my mom, we was riding, and it's crazy how it happened. But me and my mom was riding, and the same cousin that molested me, ended up seeing my mom's car on July the 10th in '97. He saw my mom's car, he flagged her down. He kept trying to flag her down. She kept going because we was trying to get home, and he flagged her down, and she pulled over and he asked her to get out of the car and step to his car. So me, I'm curious. I turned the radio down and try to hear exactly what he's about to tell my mom. And I
Hmm.
heard him when he told her that he had died, but I didn't show any emotions. I just act like I didn't hear what he said. And when we got home, she called us under the car porch and she sat us down. And it was me, my younger brother, and her oldest child. And she sat us down and she started talking, but she worked in the conversation that my father had died in a on a job, like doing a live fisherman job in the water. He had passed away. And that was July the 10th, 1997. And as time progressed, I started seeing changes in my mama that I didn't recognize. And I'm young. I've always been attentive and like independent. And I guess that's because of the trauma and stuff that that I went through. It kind of put me in a position to be independent. But I started seeing changes in my mom. She was always a go-getter, always kept a job. She always tried to keep the bills paid, no matter what hours she worked. Like sometimes she would leave for work and it'd be 3, 4 in the morning. She'd never get back home to 6, 7 at night. And then I started seeing her just being tired all the time, trying to stay in the room. She was just resting. She wasn't doing like what she usually do. She wouldn't go shopping no more. I just saw her declining, and it was just over a period of time. And then one day we was I think this was a part of the nervous breakdown because she was doing it all on her own. And as a child, I didn't see what she was feeling, and I didn't really understand it either until I got grown and I had my kids. And
Yeah.
so she was one day the cars was outside in the driveway. Her car was in the driveway, and we was walking through the house. And I remember her mother asking where she was at. She said, "Where Niecy at?" And everybody saying her car outside, her car outside. So we started searching the house outside and everything. And lo and behold, we found my mom balled up in a knot in a
Oh my
closet.
God.
And it was just like a roller coaster from there because I knew then something wasn't right. And she was an active parent volunteering in school. She had cut back on that. It was just like I was like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And I'm just trying to process it all, but it really wasn't making sense to me. So at this point, she's in the closet, and her mom is trying to, I guess, get her help or whatever. And from that day forward, I just started seeing my mom going check in and out of these mental hospitals. We going having to visit her. We sitting at a table, and she's coloring on color paper like she's a kid again. And I'm like, well, what is going on here? Like, you're a child, but you're really seeing all this stuff and you're not understanding, but you're trying to process it. So
Wow.
for years, I've seen her be admitted to um mental hospitals, and it would be like a year or two where she would be okay and she would be up, she'll be working, just surviving because she wasn't thriving at all.
Yeah.
um and then she'll have a setback and she'll be right back into that depressive state, and she's right back in a mental hospital. So it was like a roller coaster for that matter. And we went through that. We've been through that for years, and just seeing her lose her mind and having all those mental issues. Somebody had to step up to the plate to look after me, myself. I had to look after me, and then my younger brother, I had to look after him because technically he didn't have anybody. Like
Yeah.
my father was already gone, and my father's side of the family, they didn't claim my brother at that time, so it was just him and I was like, okay, I have to look after him because he don't have anybody. My oldest brother, I wasn't too concerned about him because my mother's mom, she favored him and she looked after him. So I was like, I have to look after my baby brother because he don't have anybody. Like, he was a mama's boy, and my mom, he was real close knitted to my mom. So with her going through that, I'm like, he's alone, I'm alone, let me look after my brother. So I would try to help him with his homework, make sure our clothes was clean, try to make sure we got something to eat, and just try to stay close together because regardless of what my mom went through, she always told us to make sure we stick together.
Yeah.
And that was just a motive for me at that time, like just look after your brother, And I was thinking that this would be like a short road, but it was a
Yeah.
long one. It was a long one.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long
Wow.
one.
Wow. I'm sure that's a lot, like at a young age, and having
Yeah.
to take on that responsibility of an adult. Now, how do you feel that all these things that you've gone through up until this point has had affected other relationships, like in school, your teachers, friends? Like, how did it cause you to be? How did it cause you to act? Dealing with all that and having that much, that heavy load to carry.
It made me to be uh the meanest, most like a black rattlesnake mean. Like, I became mean. I became enclosed. I really didn't want to. A part of me wanted to have people that I could call on or rely on, but the other part of me was like, I already don't trust people, so I don't need to be around anybody. And even during my high school years, because of my mom's situation, it was either you get a pair of shoes or you get school clothes. It was never you get school clothes and you get shoes. So I had to pick and
Yeah.
choose. And then with that, like the bullying and all of that,
Yeah.
it was a lot. And as I'm sitting back thinking on it, I want to use the word
Yeah.
rebellious. Like, nobody could tell me anything because, of
Yeah.
course, I became an adult at 8 years old. Technically,
Hmm.
nobody could tell me anything. once I did develop my voice, I wouldn't allow anybody to shut me up, because once I got molested, and then the way my grandmother, which is my mother's mother, used to beat me because I wet the bed and all the stuff that she did, I was like, no, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I have a voice and I'm going to speak. And that made a lot of people tell me that I was mouthy, I was disrespectful, but they
Yeah.
didn't never know the backstory of all that I endured to make me be how I was at that time. Um, I just was, it was just a put your boots on, strap them up, and if you jump off the porch, make sure you can survive. That's just the mentality that I had developed, and I knew that it was either swim or drown. Like I had nobody. And then the
Oh
people
God.
that I used to go to a little program, the Scout Neck Recreation Foundation Center, and I developed people that kind of cling to me. But I was in so much of turmoil, and that trauma was just residing so much within me that I couldn't even recognize that these people were trying to save me. I even pushed them
Yeah.
away once I got to that point where I felt like I hadn't done enough and seen enough. I was like, even they couldn't even tell me anything, and so I pushed away some good people in the process of being tormented and experiencing trauma. Um, I really did push away a lot of good people that was trying to help me, but I was just too blind to see it. I really couldn't see it in that moment because I was so hurt.
Yeah. Well, what you had gone through caused you to develop trust issues, and that happens a lot when people that you feel
Oh
like are
yeah.
supposed to, be there for you, love you, support you, have your back when they, betray you and do things that they're not supposed to do. It causes you to have trust issues, So then that just trickles into your, adult years. Now, how do you think that you overcome those trust issues? Do you still suffer from that? How did you overcome those trust issues? What was the breaking point to say, hey, I can trust, I can trust this person. I feel like this person has genuine motives towards me.
Let's be honest. As old as I am now, I still that's one of the number one things on the roster. Trust is at an all time zero. I don't have any trust with people. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and then once they prove me wrong, it's like, all right, I gave you a try, you ruined it. There's no making up, because if I give you too many tries, then you're gonna like you're gonna just keep on opening the door. It's gonna be a revolving door. And even trust with my kids, like of course, my daughters are getting older, and especially my oldest daughter, she's in that area where being in high school, the court and the dating and things of that magnitude. And I remember one specific day, I was like, let me try not to be so stern and give her a chance, just sit at the park and talk with her friend guy. And I never forget it. I took them to the park and they sat at the lake, but they got up and they started walking, and I
Mhm.
couldn't see him no more. And I panicked right then, like my anxiety went through the roof. And I told my youngest daughter, I was like, I see him there, I see him there. Go get her and tell her to come on. We gotta go. Like, and we hadn't been there no more than 20 minutes, but I was like, no, let's go. So my trust is just it's not there. And I always pray and I ask God to help me to be better with my trust issues. It's kind of like, trust people, give me the spirit of discernment and the discerning spirits. And then whenever I meet somebody new, I always ask God for that, because some people don't have good intentions, and I don't want to run. I don't want to run across those kind of people anymore. Like I've had my share of being there, showing up, and then these people not being who they say they truly are. Even in relationships, and I've been single for quite a while now, but I think that's one of the big red flags for me is trust, because it's like I don't know. It's still healing. Healing is an all time thing, and with trust, it's just a big issue for me right now. I haven't gotten to the place where I can say I truly trust, because I don't. I haven't, and I'm sure it stems from the root cause of that molestation. That's the number one root cause that initially messed with my trust.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so no, trust is not there, and I want to be more trustful of people, and I want to be able to kind of like, let's say, put that on the back burner, because I resolved that and I sat with it, and I do try, but it just hasn't happened yet. And I know that in God's time and it will, so I'm not gonna rush it. But right now, it's a no. It's a big no. I put a big no in front of that one. It's a big no. Like somebody can tell me something, just a prime example. Somebody can tell me something, and I literally have to see it in order for me to believe it. Because I'm gonna be like, yeah, I
Yeah,
hear you, but I don't believe it. So
yeah.
it's just an all time zero.
Wow. And I was
Yeah.
going to go to relationships next, as far as you spoke about being, cheated on, lied to, and I feel like those things amplified, things, the trust issues that you
Took me
already have.
out.
Like when you have trust issues, if you're going through something traumatic, when you encounter people that lie and cheat, like it just amplifies what you're already dealing with. And I feel like it hinders, your healing when you encounter those type of people. Because
Hmm.
I went through that too, but this isn't about me. We're gonna talk about you today. But I can totally understand and I know where you're coming from, because when you go through something traumatic, it really causes you to trust everybody. And when you feel like you can't trust anybody, it's really hard, to navigate through life, because, we need people, God wants us to, fellowship with other people, help each other. Um, but that can really be a stumbling block. So I pray that you heal, and I know that I feel like healing is gonna be an all the time thing. I don't think that we ever heal from anything. I feel that we
Mm-mm.
may be better, or we may be farther
Mm.
along in the healing process, but I don't think that nobody's ever completely healed. I feel like there may always be triggers. There may, those thoughts may always come back, or something that reminds you of something. So it's a continual process. Now, I know you were saying that became an alcoholic, then became addicted to sex. Like, what was the pathway to those activities? What was your pathway? What led you there, and how did you navigate and get out of
Yeah. Um, so early on, I met my children's father, and he experienced um, and I give much respect to him, and may his soul rest in peace, because I wasn't embarrassed of my mom's condition, because he accepted it and he was there to see her. In the mental hospitals. He went with me to the mental hospitals. But when I started talking to him, of course, we started our relationship and everything, and then he got murdered in 2013. So when he got murdered in 2013, it opened the wound back from my father's death, because I'm
that?
like,
Yeah,
everybody that I love, they're leaving me.
yeah,
And the men in my life that I trust and I love, they're leaving me. So when he passed away, and basically, as I mentioned, I felt alone. Like my dad was gone. That was my provider. That was my protector. That's who I loved. That's who I trusted. That's who I looked up to. So when I lost that, and then I end up getting into a relationship with Monte, he kind of he filled those voids. And with my
yeah,
mom, with her condition, she, the money was thin, spare, just free to none. So we kind
yeah,
of we thugged it out together, him and I. And
yeah,
when I lost him, I just asked God to keep my mind. I didn't care what else I experienced. I wanted to keep my
yeah,
mind. And I say
mm,
that because, as I stated before, I saw my mom lose hers, and
yeah,
that was a lot. Like, just her losing her mind, I think it was torture. And
yeah,
um, I remember when he passed away, I was with my friend girl, and this particular lady, she told my friend, she
mm,
said, look after her, because she gonna end up losing her mind like her mama. And I was in the recliner chair just rocking and crying, because I had literally, it hadn't even been 2 hours that I had got the news that he had been murdered.
yeah,
And I just stopped crying and I cried out to God. And I'm like, God, if you hear me and you're present, keep my mind. That's all I'm asking you to do. Keep my mind. But
yeah,
prayer I just didn't feel the connection with prayer. I was calling out, crying to God, but I just didn't feel like he was present. I didn't feel the energy. I didn't feel the connection. I didn't feel any
yeah,
of that. And the only thing that was sufficient for me in that moment was
yeah,
alcohol. And that's how I was introduced to alcohol.
yeah,
I started partying harder. I knew I had my daughter, but it really didn't matter right then, because I'm facing something way different that I didn't want to
yeah,
face. I didn't want her to experience what I experienced.
yeah,
So to cope with that pain,
yeah,
whatever, like Grey Goose Hennessy. I didn't care what it was. I finished the bottle and and once I'm finished, I'm knocked out. I'm cold. I don't feel anything. I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, and those, the problems they're subsided in that moment. I don't feel what I'm feeling, although I know I got to be presented with it once this alcohol wear off. But in that moment, I'm not feeling it. So his death, it took me to things that I probably would have never done had I not experienced losing him. And alcohol and that sexual addiction was it was top two tier for me. And when it comes to the sexual aspect, a lot of guys, hence another reason why I stay on top of my children, because people pray, not PRAY, but PREY on you.
Yes.
And when they see that moment where they can target and get you, and I, of course, in those moments, I was in the lowest part of my life. Um, for me, sex felt good. I mean, whatever I did, whatever it took to make me feel good and not think about me just losing the person that I love, the love of my life. I didn't think about it in those moments. Um, so that was the number one factor that led me to alcohol and being addicted to sex. And then one night I remember I was going out to a party at a club, and that's what led me to it. But this what took me from it. My oldest daughter at that time, she saw me getting dressed for the club, and she waited right as good as I was about to go out the door. And she said, "Mommy, I love you." And I said, "I love you too." And she said, "Give me a hug." And I gave her a hug. And then she told me, she said, "Where you going?" And I said, "I'm going to the club for a little while. I won't be out long." And she said, "So what happens if they shoot in the club and you die? I
Oh,
won't have no parent."
dang,
And that
girl.
that struck me because I knew then that I wasn't living right, because I knew that if I leave her, she wouldn't have anybody. So that drew me from the club, and that also made me realize I'm killing myself, because it was plenty of nights where, and mornings, because I had a newborn baby. Well, my baby was one,
Yeah.
but of course she couldn't do anything for herself. And at that time, my 5 year old, she was warming up hot dogs in the microwave and opening up cans by Enos to make sure her and her sister was eating. She'll give her a bath. She'll give her baby sister a bath, and she made sure that they was okay. But I also saw the repetitive cycles. I had to do this to my younger
Yeah.
brother. Now my 5 year old is doing this to my 1 year old. So something gotta stop. And the whole it all happened when she told me, when she asked me that, she said, "If they shoot in the club and they shoot you and you die, you won't come back home to me." And I still went, but I never enjoyed the club. The music was distasteful. The alcohol, it didn't
Yeah.
even give me a buzz. And I was like, I gotta go back home because I can't get with the groove of it. And from then until now, it's just been like, the club isn't for me. It's nothing there.
Yeah.
I have to be here with my
Wow.
girls. And if she wouldn't have said that, I don't know where I would be, because I
Yeah.
still would have been buck wild. I still would have been in the streets. I still would have been seeking alcohol, sex. But I'm also thankful that
Yeah.
I didn't run to drugs. I didn't have to sell my body, and I
Yes.
didn't do
Oh,
drugs. Those
amen.
are the two things that I can give glory to God for, because I didn't do that. I didn't sell my body, and I didn't do drugs. So I'm thankful for that.
Mm.
But it was hard. It was
Girl.
hard breaking the alcohol, because the alcohol,
Yeah.
it numbed me in that moment. And I also knew that it was time to stop, because I remember having a conversation with my children father, and he was telling me about a friend guy that was drinking to cope with his problems. And he said, "I done told him you might well stop drinking, because when you sober up, them problems gonna be right back there." And when I was sober up, I would hear his voice saying it, and I was like, I can't keep drinking like this, because it's really not taking my problems away. So it was more factors than one that led me to stop drinking as heavily as I were. Now I may drink socially, but even then, it's hard for me to
Yeah.
swallow it. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow, girl. Oh my gosh. Woo. Try to get me
it's a
over
lot.
there. You ain't gonna get me there. No, but I'm
It's a
I'm
lot.
so glad that you are where you are today. Like I can girl, it's a wonder that you have your mind. Thank God. I know you said you were praying and you didn't feel it, but he kept your mind, girl, because
Yes.
nobody would ever guess
Hmm.
all this stuff. And even when I met you when you was in high school, like you seem like, a happy go lucky girl. Like I never would have you didn't seem, mean or down or bitter or something. Like you didn't seem like any of those things. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, girl, like you never know anyone's story. And I learned that every day today. And I'm like in my 40s and I'm just like, you never know what somebody's going through.
Hmm.
Girl, you better write that book. You better write your book, girl. You got
I know if I
listen,
can get it out of my head on
girl,
paper, it is done. It is
girl.
done.
It's
It is
powerful
done.
and it will definitely help somebody. I'm telling you, girl, it's crazy. Oh my
Hmm.
God. Ooh, Lord have mercy,
And
girl.
even in those moments when I used to sit in the office with you as a receptionist, those was moments of peace for me because
Oh,
I was battling a lot at home. So whenever I can get around
wow.
somebody and I can feel like I feel love, I felt peace.
Mm.
And then I knew that when they
Oh,
rung the bell for me to go home, I was right back in torture land. So I soaked up and I cherished those moments. Like sometimes I was cutting class, like I'm going to sit in the office with Kim. It was peace in those moments. Even when
wow.
Miss Williams used to take me, because I remember when I was going to the rate and she asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and at that time I wanted to be a
Mhm.
cosmetologist. So she would take me with her to get her hair done at the salon, and the beautician would let me shampoo her hair and stuff, and it made me feel like, hey,
Oh,
I'm doing what I wanted to do. So she was one of the
okay.
women that took time with me, and of course, as I got older, I kind of distanced myself because again, I went in rebellious stage, and those is
Yeah.
one of the people that I kind of disregarded. But needless to say, I had in moments where I felt peace, I clung to those places and
Yeah.
I soaked those up because I knew I had to go back home and be tortured and in trauma and all of that stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot in my 33 years of living.
Ooh,
I don't I don't want to say I regret anything because it actually made me who I am today.
yeah.
I would have never thought that I would be still standing after all that I've done, after all that I've seen, all the places I've been, and my life could have been taken and I didn't even know that my
Yeah.
life could have been taken. Um,
Yeah.
and I try to be honest with my daughters and I talk to them about my life so that the streets can't tell them nothing that I
Yeah.
haven't already told them. So
Absolutely.
I'm very open with them. Anybody in that aspect, like the streets may have one story, but you're gonna come and get the truth from me because I lived it, I experienced it,
Yeah.
and I know what I did and what happened. So I'm always open to tell what happened to me or what I've been through. And
Yeah.
even with me transitioning from my hometown, Scotland, to Raleigh, where I
Mhm.
decided to leave. That wasn't
Okay.
peaches and cream neither. That was a
Yeah.
struggle for me because all I knew was once my children's father passed, I had no reason to be in my hometown.
Yeah.
And I just sometimes you have to move in silence, and that's what I did with that transition
Yeah.
because I knew people, if I told them, they would say, "Oh, don't leave," and they did. But I had met a I had met a girl at a job that I used to work, and she would just send me all these jobs, and I'm like, ain't no way I can stay down here, and I ain't getting no job, I ain't got no car, I ain't got nothing, so there's no way I can stay here and keep suffering like this.
Yeah.
So it was in I had told this girl that I know. I said, you gonna come looking for me in the middle of in the wee hours of the night, and I'm gonna be gone. And she took that lightly. She didn't take it serious. And I was the whole while I was just putting stuff together, and I kept making up excuses because, of course, we know when you making a change for the better, fear will come and suck you right on
Yeah.
up, and it'll talk
Absolutely.
you out of it.
Absolutely.
And I kept doing it. I kept making excuses because at that time I had my mom's car, which was raggedy, and I kept using that car as an excuse. Like once they fix the car, I'm gonna come on so I can have
Yeah.
transportation. That car didn't never get fixed. So
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, girl, just come and pick me up. So she came and
Yeah.
I had her tote of clothes. I just threw clothes in the tote. I didn't know what they matched. I didn't care if it was summer, winter. I just threw
Wow.
stuff in the tote, and I had just got my tax return, so I had roughly about $7,000. And I
Hmm.
told her, I said, "Come on and pick me up." And we packed down to her car like sardines, and we got back to Raleigh. And when I we was packed down, honey. But when we got here, she took me to the shelter that she was staying in, And I think that shelter for taking me and my kids in, because had they not, we wouldn't have had nowhere to stay. So we stayed there for 30 days. They give you 30 days on the non-permanent side. We stayed there for 30 days. On that 30th day at 5 in the morning, they came to our bunk with me and my kids, and they told us that our time was up. So we had to find somewhere to go. So I'm in a frenzy because I'm like, I got two kids. I ain't learned this city. I don't even know the bus route. I ain't got no car. I ain't got no job yet. And the money was only going to take me so far. So I'm in a frenzy trying to figure out what we're gonna do. So I end up applying for the permanent side, and I end up getting approved. But when I went in there, I was like, this ain't me. This is ratchet in here. Like, I can't stay here. My kids can't be here. So I started going out myself. I got to rent a car. I couldn't afford a car, Kim, but God made a way. Every time the bill would do, I check this, I check that. I have some money enough to cover that car. I was like, God, I see you and I thank you. He's kept me. He's kept me. And I just started getting out because the girl that bought me here, she ended up showing her side, which was her true colors, which is another thing that gets me to say I have trust issues, because she tried to little girl me, and I'm like, we not doing it. So that made me go out and start seeing things, getting to know the city for myself. And just like carrying a baby for 9 months and then you birthing that baby, that was my journey when I got to Raleigh, because within 9 to 10 months is when we got our first apartment. And everywhere I went, 3 times the rent, XYZ credentials, and that last place that I went to, I told the lady, and they had denied me too, because I had like a lot of traffic things on my record, and they didn't know whether it was traffic or criminal. And I kept telling them, I said, I don't have a criminal record, it's traffic. So the last lady denied me, and I said, you know what? I said, we're gonna fight about this one. So I told her, I said, listen, I'm going to the courthouse. I'm gonna get my record, and I'm bringing it back to you, because you're not gonna tell me no. I said, me and my children need somewhere to stay. But manifestation is real too, because I spoke what I wanted my place to be. And I got that 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, living room, and dining room. And that's exactly what I got. So, and I say that to say God is merciful and he's gracious, because he didn't only give me my heart's desires, he made it where I didn't even, they took off half of my first month rent, and then I didn't even have to pay for the lights. They worked that out for me too. I didn't have to pay a dime. So I know that even in the midst of me going through, I know God was with me, because we all know Riley is something serious. And but when we end up leaving the shelter, we left the shelter, and I still had to run a car. I won't give that car up, because that was like a shield for us. And I just want, and then people were calling me, Kim. I told every time that man called me, I said, sir, I'm coming. I'm gonna bring you something. I'm bringing you something. Can you work with me? He got tired of me, Kim. But I said, I'm coming. And I sent him a little song. I even had a job where they pay something on me because they wanted me to work. And some nights, Kim, I didn't after the money had ran out and I couldn't afford no hotel, I said, you know what? It's only one or two things. I'm either gonna swim or I'm gonna drown. And the crazy part about it, I was determined to leave home because I never gave my key away to my apartment. I still had my key. But and I could have took me and my kids back home, but I knew I wouldn't have thrived as much as I am now if I would have stayed there. So we started sleeping in the car. I would get a hotel, and this hotel was like a trap hotel. Like, honey, I didn't even. I was so messed up in my head and trying to make sure me and my children had somewhere to stay. I didn't even know what we was in the midst of, honey. So I know God had us covered. And then sometimes we would sleep in the car. Sometimes I would sleep on the side of the highway because I'm like, I don't think nobody come and mess with us on the side of the highway. So I just put a crack in the window just so we can get some air, and I lock the doors. And I would let my kids sleep because I'm like, y'all got school and daycare, y'all get y'all rest. I'll kind of watch out for us as y'all sleep. So they would rest and I'll just be up, one eye open, one eye closed. But we was in the car, we was in the we started at the shelter, slept in the car, slept on the side of the road, we slept in parking lots. Some mornings when it was time to get a bath, baby, we going in the convenience store. Look, we got to take a bath, we lock the door, everybody go in there, we wash up, we leave out, we go about our day. We endured that, and I'm not ashamed to say that because that's what it took to get me where I'm at. And one day we was on the public, but I was on the public bus, and it was just a voice that was plain and clear. And I'm thinking I'm crazy because I'm hearing something talk to me, and I'm like, what is this? And that voice said, in order for you to move forward, you gotta let go of what you holding on to. And it told me to
Mm,
turn my key back in. And honey, I'm like, what you
mm.
mean? Turn my key back in? I can't turn the key back in because there's a safety net. If this don't work out, me and my children going back home.
Yeah,
But honey, I had to
yeah.
turn the key in. So
Mm,
I called the leasing manager at my old project and I told her, I said,
mhm.
I told her thanks for letting me stay there. I enjoyed my time there. It
Yeah.
really was a stepping stone for me. And I told her, I said, but I have to turn my key back in for you. And she told me, she was like, you've been a good resident. I don't want to lose you. Is there anything that I can do? I said, ma'am, my time has run up. I gotta go.
I
And
know that's right.
she tried to keep me in there as best as she could, but I told her, I said, XYZ
Mm,
day and time, I'm gonna meet you and I'm gonna bring you the key. And we did
mm,
it. And she told me, she's like, I hate that I'm losing you, but if it's for the better, then I'm okay with it. And I said, yes, it's for the better. So when that voice
mm,
spoke to me, I went and I took my key back. And it wasn't long after that that me and my children got the key to our new place,
mhm,
and
mm.
everything just started opening up from there. And it just each year it just gets better
Wow.
and better. Each year it
Mm,
gets better and
mm,
better.
mm.
I'm not where I used to be, although I'm not where I want to
Yeah,
be, but I'm right where God wants me to be. So for that,
I know
I'm
that's
truly
right.
thankful. I'm truly thankful.
Mm.
I'm truly
Girl,
thankful. Yeah,
girl. Oh my God, Kendra. You
I'm
know, I was
truly
as you were
thankful.
talking, I remembered your question. You was like, "Okay, God, why me?" Because guess what? Somebody else might not have told their story. Somebody else might not
Hmm.
have that. They wouldn't tell their testimony to help other people that are going through, what they went through. I know the saying is, God can trust you with trouble. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
well, I don't want you to trust me with that. But guess what? You're putting your testimony out there. He knows that you're a vessel, that you're going to speak and tell everybody what he did for you, how you got through it, how he was there. Like, he can't trust everybody with that. Because, like you said, everybody's not transparent, or some people are ashamed. But what we go through, gets us to where we are. And that's, like you said, that's what made you who you are today. And what he has for you, now and in the future, you had to go through that to be prepared for where he's taking you.
Yeah,
Girl.
you
Woo.
are definitely
Mm.
right. And it was
Girl. Oh
hard.
my gosh.
I won't tell
Mm.
anybody that it wasn't hard. It was hard because,
Oh yeah.
like, when I first got here, it wasn't just me. I had two kids
Yeah.
tagging along behind me. Some
Yeah.
days the money was funny because, of course, I was renting a room, I was renting a car,
Yeah.
so my check was going
Mm.
between those two things. And then
Yeah.
when the funds was leveled out, I had to choose whether or not I'm gonna get this mac chicken, this mac double, a fry, and they share a drink. Like, what are we gonna do? I had to make hard
Yeah.
decisions, and I could have reached out and got help, but I closed the world off.
Yeah.
I latched in with God and I cut the world off because I
Mm.
knew everybody didn't have my best interest at heart. I knew that.
Yep.
And some people got a pleasure out of seeing me struggle. They got a pleasure out of seeing me in those low places. But when
Mm.
I left, I deactivated social media. I didn't talk to anybody. Nobody didn't even know where I was at. They probably thought I was missing, but nobody knew. I
Mm.
never got back onto social media until I felt like I was strong enough mentally to decline every open invitation
Yeah.
to come back.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
when I got back on social media. And I'm thankful for that because had I stayed where I was at, Kim, I don't know where I would
Mm.
be today. But I know I wouldn't be who I
Well.
am. And
Mm.
I tell my kids all the time, y'all should be thankful. You should be grateful that you
Yeah.
get this version of me. My oldest daughter, I
Yes.
love her to death because
Yes.
and we was going through some pictures of when we was living in the projects, and it's so crazy because she looked at the pictures and she got teary-eyed and she said, you know what, Mom?
Aw.
We grew up together. And I said, we
Mm.
did. You shared some of my troubles with
Wow.
me. You seen me do things that you didn't understand, but
Mm.
I did them anyway. Like she's been through
Yeah.
the hardship. She's now getting to see the
Yeah.
glory. My youngest daughter, she
Yeah.
was one. She don't recall all of the
Yeah.
project stuff
Yeah.
that my oldest do. So she's always seen more of the glorified side. She's
Yeah.
coming in on the promise versus being
Yeah.
down in the pit in the
Woo.
valley with like
Girl.
my oldest
Mm.
daughter. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
just tell them, just be thankful for where we are
Yeah.
because it could have always, with all that stuff I endured, I could only imagine me somewhere strung
Yeah.
out on drugs, prostituting,
Woo.
not caring about my children. Like all of those was
Woo.
options.
Yep.
But I was
Uh-huh.
determined not to walk in the footsteps of my mama. If nothing
Yeah.
else was to matter to me, I never wanted to walk in the footsteps of my mom because I know now that I'm older, I know it was a lot of pain for her to endure. And
Yeah.
I want to mention this too before we end because I know it's a lot of females that can't stand their mama. And me and my mom, we were that. I hated my mama, and I've hated my mama all the way up until this year. I hated her. I didn't want to
Wow.
talk to her. If I go in her presence, I would get pissed off. Any little thing she say or do, she pissed me off. I did not like her. I did not like my mother. She birthed me, and that's all I gave her praise for. But beyond that, I did not like my mother. But God has a way of doing things where you're gonna have to sit down. And He set me down. He took everything away from me last year, everything. And again, that voice told me because I stepped away from everything concerning her, and he told me go back. And I told God, I said I'm not going back because there's no way that she's gonna keep playing in my face like that. And God said I'll take everything away from you until you obey me.
Ooh,
And God took
girl.
everything. I was
Oh
swiping
my God.
one debit card to the next debit card, on nothing on none of them cards, and he took everything away from me. So I let my pride to the side, and I said, you know what?
Yeah.
If nobody else is gonna do it, who's gonna do it? So I had to step up to the plate and take on responsibilities for her. And it
Yeah.
wasn't then. And mind you, I've been dealing with mama issues since I was 8. I'm about to be 34.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't until this year where I was like, you know what? I realized, and God let me feel some of her pain. Some of the stuff that she went through that
Yeah.
I didn't understand, I felt that to get an understanding of what she felt.
What she?
And
Yeah. Absolutely.
the key takeaway for me was she did what she did to me and it made me feel how I feel about her, but she didn't know any better. So I'm not gonna hold her accountable for what she didn't know, but I do hold her accountable for what
Yeah.
she could change and what she could have done. And in this whole process, even with her now, I always ask God, if you just give me peace, I'll do what you asked me to do concerning her. And that's the only thing I could have asked for was peace because
Sure.
without him, I couldn't even stand to be in her presence. And I know God is in the midst of it because we'll just sit on the phone now and nobody won't even say anything for about an hour, 30 minutes, but we just sitting on the phone. And to me, that gives me joy because before I wouldn't even answer the phone for her. It could be life threatening. I wouldn't know because I'm not answering it. So,
Oh my God.
just dealing with those mommy issues. And I know they moms, parents, they call, and it's not just mothers too, it's fathers too. They
Yeah.
cause their kids a lot of pain that they really don't realize. But
Yep.
you have to
That's
really
true.
see it for what it's worth. They was raised in a time that's completely different from how we're raised. And I just came to the point where, you know what, I just gotta accept that she did the best she could. She
Yeah.
really did the best
Yeah.
she could with what she had. Her resources was
Yep.
very
That's
limited.
right.
And
Yeah.
I don't look at her from a place of pain and torture anymore. I just try to look at her saying, hey, she need me now. And if anything was to happen
Yeah.
to her, I want my mind and my peace, my heart to be at
Yeah.
peace, knowing that I did what I could for her while I could. So that kind of
That's right.
that kind of opened the door to forgive her for all that she did and the parts that she played in making me feel how I felt. And the abandonment, the neglect, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It plays a big part in who you are as a person, and it hurts. It really
Yeah.
do hurt. But
Yeah.
just having this opportunity to talk because I knew I was gonna cry, but I didn't think I was gonna cry like this. But being
Yes,
able to
girl.
open up and talk
Yeah.
about it, I hope that I'm giving somebody else hope to say, hey, it's not the end of the road. I'm telling you, it's not the end of the road because you should look at me and say,
Yeah.
hey, this girl came from Scotland,
Exactly.
worked first, welfare, all that she done been through, and that ain't even half all I done endured, felt
Yeah.
because I done been suicidal and everything else, but I'm still here. I ain't gave up, I ain't
Girl.
thrown in the
Yeah.
rope. I may be here. I ain't gonna break. I'm not breaking. I
I
ain't
know that's
breaking. And
right,
there's
girl.
more to come. So
He's definitely with you. Absolutely.
definitely,
He's definitely with
definitely,
you, girl. He done kept you,
definitely,
so he got a great work for you, honey. I'm telling you. So I'm gonna speak
definitely.
that out there. We're gonna go and write this book, honey. We're gonna go and get that money and help them
Yes,
people and put that testimony out there. Do you hear me, girl? Because
yes,
it's powerful.
yes,
I'm
yes,
so glad, girl. Enemy, he didn't want you to come up here, girl. He was trying to fight us. We I said, honey, this must be something that gotta be out there because
you
that
hear me?
storm. Yes, I was like, okay, it's something to this because I ain't never had to cancel a session because of a storm. I was like, okay, Lord, we'll reschedule it. I said, okay, yeah, it's gonna be something the enemy don't want you to get out there, but we got it out there
And
today, that's for sure.
Kim, in the day, I was like, I don't know why I know when things are meant to be because it'll be a distraction and I lose
Yeah,
interest and I'll be like, I'm
yes,
not really. Even today,
yes.
believe it or not, I was going to inbox you and say, not today. But I was like, you know what? Let me
Oh
go save somebody. I really was not trying to get on this call today.
yes,
But that's just the enemy trying to stop
yes.
what needs to be carried
Trying to
forward.
stop it.
Somebody somewhere
Absolutely.
gonna hear this
Yeah.
video from this podcast and they may get the deliverance that they need. They may get the clarification,
Yeah.
whatever they need. I hope that they can take it from this video because it's not cute, but it's worthy. You just gotta see it through.
Yeah.
Trust and believe. Trust and believe. You gotta trust and
Yeah.
believe.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
honey. Well, thank you so much, like I said again, for coming on with us today. And as always, people, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Kimberly Speaking 8062. And until we speak again, be blessed.